second reading this morning comes from John's Gospel, the 18th chapter, beginning with verse 33, and we'll read through verse 38 this morning. Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Pilate asked him, "What is truth?" This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Interesting text. I started out one place and wound up in a completely different place. This morning I want to talk about truth. Pontius Pilate asks Jesus, "What is truth?" And perhaps on this Christ the King Sunday, and preparing for our first Sunday in Advent, maybe we ought to ask ourselves that same question, and that is, what is truth? You know, since the fall of man, the truth has been an issue for the human race. The serpent told Eve that God was not telling her and Adam the truth about that forbidden tree. God had told Adam and Eve that if they ate from the tree in the middle of the garden, they would die. And the serpent came around and said, "Nope, that's not true. If you eat from that tree, you won't die." God doesn't want you to know the truth. That to eat from that tree would make them be like God, opened eyes, and knowing good and evil. What is truth? An obvious accepted fact, accuracy, integrity, honesty, something indisputable. Sure, that's truth. Albert Einstein said about the truth that anyone who does not take truth seriously in small matters cannot be trusted in large ones either. Mark Twain said, "If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything." And Winston Churchill once said that the truth is incontrovertible. Malice may attack it, ignorance may deride it, but in the end, there it is. The truth is important to us. We want people to be truthful. We don't necessarily like it when people lie to us. Truth matters, but what exactly is truth? Pilate was asking this very thing this morning in this gospel passage from John, and it is a familiar passage to us. The arraignment of Jesus standing before Pilate. He's brought there by the Jewish leaders, and Pilate asks Jesus, he turns to him and he says, "Are you king of the Jews?" And in this arraignment, instead of answering the charge guilty or not guilty, Jesus responds with a question. "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" And to me, it seems like from this point forward, the exchange between Jesus and Pilate, it kind of goes downhill for Pilate after this. You see, he was a governor in the Roman Empire, undoubtedly the most powerful man in the region. It was his job to keep peace. An angry mob of Jewish leaders had brought him a man to be killed, and Pilate needed to find out why. It was his duty to find out why. The charge brought against Jesus was that he claimed to be the Messiah, the King of the Jews. And all Pilate really needed was a clear-cut answer to his question so that he could evaluate the truthfulness of this accused man, and instead he was answered with a question. According to Emily M. Towns from the Yale Divinity School, in intellectual terms, we tend to think of truth in terms of reliability and dependableness. And this was the type of truth that Pilate was looking for. Jesus, you're the defendant. I would like to have from you a reliable and dependable answer. However, Jesus didn't answer in intellectual terms of truth. Instead, according to Towns, he answered in the religious terms of the truth, which expands way beyond the intellectual idea of truth. The truth with which Jesus answered showed an unwavering conformity with the will of God. It was the type of truth that Jesus had spoken and lived throughout his entire ministry. A truth that was something that was done rather than something that was simply believed or thought of. And Pilate didn't understand that answer. He struggles to get a handle on the situation. I'm not a Jew, am I? Your own nation, your own people, the chief priest, they handed you over to me. What have you done? Pilate wasn't stupid. He honestly couldn't find any fault in Jesus. But Pilate also knew that there was an angry mob outside, out there in the courtyard. And Pilate begins to think to himself, I don't want to be that one guy, that one governor in this Roman Empire who couldn't tend to his business. The way things were going, it almost appeared as if it was Pilate who was on trial and not Jesus. Pilate begins to think that perhaps he's in danger of losing control of this situation. Jesus answers Pilate. He says to him, his kingdom is not of this world, because if it were, his followers would be fighting to keep him from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom's not from here. So you are a king. Pilate thought he saw an opening. This would be his way out. Everyone knew that there was only one true king, and that king was Caesar. If Jesus would tell Pilate the truth, that he claimed to be a king, then Pilate would have trapped him with something he could charge him with. Again, Pilate was afraid that if he did not give the people what they wanted, which was Jesus crucified, he was afraid he would lose control of his province. I don't think he was afraid of Jesus. I don't think he viewed Jesus as an immediate threat to his power. Pilate was torn between finding out the real truth of the matter and keeping his house in order. He was looking for that intellectual truth. But in his best estimation, he wasn't getting it. So you are a king. You've just been talking about your kingdom and your followers. Surely you'll have to answer in the affirmative now. You're a king. Jesus says, you say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. You can almost see Pilate slapping his head in frustration as he asked Jesus then finally, what is truth? And Pilate's left with a decision to make. Turn Jesus over, or risk losing control by finding no fault in him. Pilate himself was trapped. What is truth? Pilate asked, because in his mind he had not heard it yet from Jesus, even though Jesus was testifying before him that he was the embodiment of the truth. The truth Pilate was seeking was standing right next to him on trial. In his gospel, John constantly brings the theme of truth to the forefront. He began his gospel by identifying Jesus with God's truth. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. In John 14, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you know me, you will know my Father also. And from now on, you do know him and have seen him. And here in this trial before Pilate, John's last reference to truth, Jesus declares that his kingdom is present in everyone who hears and accepts his testimony. And Pilate didn't understand what Jesus was saying. Intellectually, Jesus had not delivered any facts, nothing firm that Pilate could stand on, nothing that sounded reliable or dependable. What have you done, Jesus? Pilate asks. According to John's gospel, Jesus had enabled people to face the truth about themselves, their relationships, their faith, and the world in which they lived. Jesus had not given an intellectual interpretation of the truth to Pilate. He'd given Pilate an answer that demonstrated an unwavering conformity with the will of God. Jesus had given a truth that was not simply believed or thought of. He had given a truth that had been done. And Pilate has this opportunity right before him to recognize that truth. He's staring truth in the face. However, he's not interested in Jesus' truth. And in a contemptuous voice, he asks, what is truth, Jesus? And then he turns Jesus over to the people to be beaten and executed. Have you been asking yourself the same question this morning? What is truth? What is it? Do you recognize the truth as Jesus presented it? Or are you trapped the same way Pilate was, caught up in the intellectual pursuits of what is reliable and dependable? Pilate's need to remain in control blinded him from seeing Jesus as the way, the truth, and the life. What are you trying to control in your life right now that prevents you from accepting the truth that is Jesus? We live in a society with almost every creature comfort known to man. Are we afraid of losing our status? Are we afraid of losing our things? Are we afraid of losing relationships? Are we scared of being kicked out of our comfort zones? What would happen? What would happen if we fully lived into the truth of Jesus Christ? What are we afraid of? In truth, Jesus Christ is a king. He is the King of kings. So on Christ the King Sunday, the church proclaims Jesus the King. We announce to the world that we bow only to Jesus. On Christ the King Sunday, we declare that we do not give any allegiance to any other person, principality, or power claiming to be sovereign. And we can declare this as loudly as we can and as much as we want, but the challenge is to actually live out this profession. Sometimes it's not so easy to proclaim something as bold as Jesus. Jesus is Lord and King, period. And sometimes that's hard for us to proclaim and live out. Jesus didn't answer Pilate with an intellectual truth. In responding, do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me? That was Jesus inviting Pilate to be himself. Be yourself, Pilate. Jesus is seeking to encounter the real Pilate, the Pilate who is feeling trapped and afraid of losing control. He's inviting Pilate to be transparent with him, even though he knows Pilate is sending him to his death. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice, Pilate. Even on the doorstep of his death, Jesus is offering to be the good shepherd to Pilate. He's offering to be Pilate's king right then, right there. And those sheep hear the voice of the good shepherd and are led to abundant life. And he didn't hear it. So what is truth? Jesus is truth. And the offer he made to Pilate is the same offer that he makes to us. But beware. To accept this offer from Jesus, we are required to face the truth about ourselves, because Jesus wants the authentic you. Warts and all. That's who he wants. Pilate rejected Jesus' offer because he felt the need to maintain control for himself. Today we proclaim Jesus as King of Kings. Today we're looking forward to the season of Advent, where we will begin to anxiously await the fulfillment of God's promise of a Messiah. And what better time to be alert? What better time to be open and willing to walk into this truth that is a challenge, but it's also a gift. It's a gift of God's infinite love and grace. Pontius Pilate rejected it. What will you do? Amen. Let us now stand and say what we believe using the words of the Apostles' Creed, now printed in your bulletin. Brothers and sisters, what do you believe? I believe in God the Father,